Again, I'm Allie from Pop-Up Painters, and we are going to be creating this amazing tulip painting. It's really, really, really great because it's got a lot of contrast in the highlights and shadows, and I absolutely love it. Good morning, Elaine and Sam. Hi, Melissa. So let's get started. Hi, Paige. Hi, Sierra. Okay, so we've got all of our supplies that we need. There we go. And I just want to go over them quickly. So I'm going to be painting on a canvas. I've got the colors needed for today. So we've got blues and greens, teal. I'm going to have a little bit of highlights with yellow, pink, and white, as well as purple. If you don't have all of these colors, that's totally fine. You can definitely make this painting as long as you have a few different colors for darker and lighter highlights and contrasts. We're going to need a sponge. We're going to need a piece of chalk, which I prefer, or a pencil if you don't have chalk. Hi, Haley. Hi, Erin. Hi, Zara, Sammy, and Noah. Good morning. We also are going to be using a couple of different paintbrushes. So, and we've got our water basin, which I like these little mushroom containers. They're perfect because the paint water doesn't spill over with the weight of the brush. And then I just use these plastic plates because they're fantastic and you can reuse them over and over. So let's get started. For your background, you guys can choose whatever colors you want. We're gonna do an ombre background. So we're starting with a lighter color at the bottom and we are going to fade it up into the top. So I've chosen to do sort of like a white, teal, and a blue. You guys can choose whatever colors you want. You can do, you know, yellow going into red if you want sort of a sunset color. You can do maybe yellow into green, or you could do sort of blues and purples. It's entirely up to you. Hi, Evelyn and Fletcher. Hi, Sydney and Olivia. So I'll get started. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my white, teal, and my blue. So those are the three colors that I will be using on my background. And I'm going to, here, let me just readjust this. I'm going to put the white down at the very bottom with my teal. And then I'm going to put the blue at the top. So using your sponge, you want your sponge to be a little bit damp. So we're gonna dip it into the water, but I want you guys to squeeze it out as much as you can. I don't want any water dripping out of it when you're squeezing it. It's gotta be very, very, very lightly damp. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna allow your blend to form perfectly. If you use a dry sponge with this particular technique, your background's gonna appear choppy, which is totally fine, but we're gonna go for more of a smoother look. So starting at your bottom, so that I'm doing mine upside down, but you guys are gonna start at the bottom of your painting. And you are gonna start by just going up and down and getting that first color onto half of your canvas. And then from there, good morning, Crystal. Hi, kids. From there, what you're gonna do is you are going to stretch in that blue. So how that's gonna look is once I've got it on my sponge, and I'm gonna pull it across like that, I'm gonna pull down some of that blue right into the bottom color. And you can go all the way down, but just do it very, very, very lightly. We don't want it too dark down at the bottom. You just want it to look a little streaky. And then just pull up that green there so it's nice and smooth. There. And then once you're happy with your background, what you're gonna do is you are going to wash your sponge. So I'm just gonna dip mine in my water, and I'll do that later. And I'll give you guys a second to finish your backgrounds. So what I've done is I've taken my light color. So I wanted sort of a light teal. So I put teal and white at the bottom, and then I put my blue on top. And what I did with my sponge is just went over that bottom color first. And then as I got closer to the top, I pulled and stretched that color down into the bottom color, because you do want the ombre to look like it's sort of fading. And then I actually switched my brush my sponge upside down, and I just smoothed the entire background so that you've got a nice consistent flow of the lighter to the darker color. So if you're using other colors and things like that, this is gonna look amazing. I can't wait to see what colors you guys have chosen. Good morning, Carolyn Maddox. Thanks for painting with me. So that's gonna be our first step for creating the Mother's Day tulips. Before we get started, I will just give you guys a little bit of different options for this particular painting. So we've chosen to do our painting portrait. If anybody has done it landscape, which is this way, that's totally fine. You can absolutely do this. You'll just have shorter tulips, which is a-okay. But we're gonna do, I'm gonna do my samples in portrait, which means that the painting is long this way. I've got 2 tulips on this sample. Today I'm gonna do 3, just to show you that you can kind of personalize it. So I thought I would actually make this for my mom and give it to her, representing sort of her and her 2 granddaughters. You can do 2, which is sort of like in my sample. If you just wanna do 1, that's absolutely fine as well. So this is entirely up to you. So you can decide if you want to do 1 flower or 2 or 3, however many you want. Just make sure that when we're drawing our flowers out that they're different sizes, because you want to make sure that the tulips themselves are going to be at different parts on your painting. So how we're going to do that is everyone's going to grab their chalk or their pencil. If you are using a pencil, do it very, very lightly. And what you're gonna do is you're going to map out where you're going to put your tulips. And how you're gonna do this is you are going to start with 1 in the middle, and all you're doing is a smile or the letter U. So that's gonna be my center tulip. I'm going to paint on the rest, but I've just put it there for spacing. The next tulip that I'm going to do, I'm going to do it down on the side. So for my first tulip, I want to bring my stem, and it's going to curve down slightly. And then this gives me a tulip here and a tulip over here. So my next tulip is going to face inwards towards this tulip, and it's going to be a little bit smaller because it's representing one of the kids. And then I'll bring down my stem, and I'm going to do another one on this side. So I'm figuring my stem will fall halfway between the ends of this one, so probably about there. And then that brings the next little tulip maybe up this way. So there's my 3 tulips. So if you've made a mistake, or if you're not entirely happy with the positioning of everything, by all means you guys can redraw, and then you'll just erase or wipe off the chalk of where you don't want it. So I'm looking at mine, it's not quite even, so I might move over this bulb slightly and put it maybe just more over here, just so it looks a little bit more even. But that's why we do this in chalk, because we definitely want to be able to paint where we want it, and then we don't worry so much about the chalk lines afterwards. So as you can see, I've redrawn where I want this tulip to go, and then when I'm painting, I'll just paint that and I'll worry about the chalk lines afterwards. So pretty easy peasy. So when you're creating your tulips, we're gonna use 2 different brushes. So I've got a round brush and I have a square brush. These are my two favorite brushes to use, and you guys will have noticed if you've painted with me before that these are the ones I often use. And they're really, really easy because you can do almost all the techniques with them, which I absolutely love. So what we're gonna do first, either of these brushes work. I'm gonna start with the round brush myself. Anytime you're using your brush, I want you guys to dip it in water first to prep it, and then you always roll your brush nice and flat. You don't dry brushes by squishing them down. That separates your bristles and it might make for a very messy painting. So we're just gonna roll our brush and it'll prep our bristles and get them all nice and ready. And what we're gonna do is we are going to paint on the first layer. So these flowers have about 3 or 4 coats on them that create the contrast and create all of the different highlights and shadows. So the first layer is gonna be your dominant color. So that's gonna be the color that the tulips are sort of going to look like that sort of stands out. So mine are sort of a pinky purple color. So I'm gonna start with my pink, and I'm going to paint in the entire shape of the tulip. So I've got pink on my plate. And our tulips have about 3 or 4 petals that are that shape out at the ends. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna outline the bottom. I'm gonna start with my middle one. And I'm gonna outline the bottom of the tulip just like this. And then what I'm gonna do is shape just where the petals are gonna come out. So I'm gonna have sort of 1 and 2, might be another one over here. And this part does not have to be perfect at all. When we go ahead and we add all of the shadows and the highlights to the painting, you're gonna notice that it's really gonna start to come to life. This is just the base coat. So we're just color blocking sort of this first part of our tulip so that it's all ready for the colors. Okay, so we're gonna do that for all 3 of our tulips, or 2 or 1 or however many that you've painted. Just wanna make sure they're nice and long. There we go. So we can go ahead and do that. So I want you guys to go and color block in all of your tulips. So again, we come all the way around the color that we've, the line that we've painted. And remember that our tulips are sort of shaped. They start at the center and they curve in. So your flower petals aren't necessarily coming out of the tulip. They're all curving in towards each other. So in the comments, I want you guys to let me know, how many tulips did you decide to do, and are you having them represent anybody? So are you guys drawing 1 for just mom, or 1 for maybe just grandma? Did you decide to do 4 for all the kids in the family? I want you guys in the comments to let me know how many you've decided to paint, because I'd love to know. All right, so there's another one of our tulip bases. And then this one is gonna be another one down here. And I'm trying to stagger the tulips. I don't want them all at the exact same height. I want them to be at different spots on the canvas, just to give it a little bit of dimension. We don't want it to look like it's too perfect. There we go. All right, so Lynn's doing 2 tulips. I love it, fantastic. Lynn, did you do the same color scheme? Are you using the similar colors that we've chosen, or are you doing something different? Erin is doing 4 and 3. Oh, fantastic. I'm excited to see what the 4th one looks like. The one with the 4. I haven't seen that before. All right, so there are my tulips. And this will be for big sister, so it'll be a little bit taller. Okay, perfect. Just want to look at it this way. Fantastic. So this is great. So I'm gonna get you guys to finish up your bases. When you are done, we've got three tulips for each of our family, also different heights. Fantastic. Oh, these are gonna look fantastic. Okay, so what you guys are gonna do now is we're gonna put green onto our palettes whenever you're done painting your tulips, and you're gonna just paint in the stem. So the stem gets thinner at the bottom, so what I recommend is just starting at the base of your flower, and you're just going to flick it at the end so it has a nice little point. So dip it in your paint and starting at your flower, and you're gonna come all the way down, and you're going to flick so it has that fine ending to it. And we'll do the same over here. So come around and flick. Oh, that one's a bit short. There we go. Perfect. I'm just gonna smoothen this one out a little bit. Okay, so we've got our 3 bases. Oh, Isabella's doing 3 and Susan's doing 2 light pink. Oh, pretty. That'll look nice. All right. So I'm just using a little bit of water on my paintbrush, not very much, and I'm just going over those chalk lines that I don't want on there, just so you guys can see. I'd recommend doing this afterwards. I'm going to do it right now, just again so you guys can see, but you don't have to. Nobody else is seeing yours right now. Good morning, Aunt Noreen. Thanks for hopping on. Don't tell my mom that this is what we're painting for her. Okay, so anyways, so we've got our base coat and we have our green stems. So I'll give you guys a second to get those all finished. And then what I want you to do is you are going to think about the colors that are going onto the tops of your flowers. So you need to have a shadow and you need to have a highlight color. So I have yellow, or sorry, not yellow. I've got yellow on my stems, but on the tulip itself, I have white and purple that are going to be my highlights and my shadows. So what this painting is actually made up of, and it's one of my favorites for that reason, is each of these tulip petals we have to sort of form, and they're kind of like teardrop shapes. Good morning, Madeline and Lauren. So when I go over these, there's no rhyme and reason, so yours might not look like mine. So I want you guys to put in a lighter color. So if you have white, that would probably work best. So you're gonna put white and then a darker color. So for pink, I use purple. If you're doing blue flowers, you can also use purple. If you chose red, purple would also look really nice on there. What other colors? If you've done a teal color, you can use blue as your shadow. If you've done yellow, you could use an orange or a red. If you've used any other colors and you're curious, let me know and I'll see if I can answer them in the comments. But I'm using pink, so I want to put on whites and purples. And then I also have my original pink still on the palette because I will use that for some blending. Hi, Maya Bell. She's doing 3 tulips and she wants to do another one with 2. Oh, fantastic. You'll have to share those pictures with me, Maya Bell, when you're all finished. Okay, so for the first step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in the shadows. So I'm using purple, and like I said, we have to reform the shapes of each of these petals. So starting at your points, all you're gonna do is you are almost going to outline your petal. So I'm going to do this very distinctly so you can see and get a good idea of where you're going to put your shadows. And this is really about playing around with those shadows to get exactly the look that you're going for. But I'm just going to show you. Okay, so you can see I've just thrown on the shadows in and around sort of those 2 the outer edge petals, and then down the centers, the sides of the 2 ones in the center. And then on this one up here, I'm gonna kind of outline this petal And then I'm gonna put some shadows going down and around this one. Okay, so it's starting to look a little choppy, but that's what we're going for. We want to see the contrast between the darker and the light in these tulips. It's a layered painting, so it's got lots of different colors on it. So that's why this looks very choppy and distinct right now. This is only step number 2, and we want to make sure that we've got all of these contrast shadows on our tulips. Okay, so for this one, I'm gonna kind of do the same where I really want these two side tulip petals to stand out. And then with our shadows, we have to have some shadows coming up from the base. So I'm just doing a few little lines coming up from the base. And then I'll bring it up closer and give you guys a nice close look. So there's our choppy looking flowers. Would love to paint these tulips on wood. What color would you recommend for a base or background color? Oh, on wood. I like the lighter blue colors myself, or even a light green. So green mixed with yellow would look really, really nice, but I would almost do it in a wash. So on wood, the wood would take a bit longer to dry than a canvas. But what I would recommend is if you mix a little bit of the paint, the acrylic paint with water on your sponge and do almost a wash. So I would say, like, rather than a light damp sponge, I would just do it maybe a little bit more water, still damp, but I would put sort of a light teal and the blue, or even like a green, like maybe yellow and green, and I would just put that around the background, but it would be watered down so it would pull out those grains, which I think would look really nice, if that makes sense. Janeth, I hope I pronounced that right. So that's what I would probably do, even if you did a white wash. So just white paint with a sponge and water, and just wash that onto the wood. That might turn out really, really nice and make your tulips pop. Okay, so we've got our shadows on, and now what we need to do is pull out some of the highlights. So this is where it starts to get really funky, but I like this part. So with the white, what you're gonna do with your lighter color, so again, I'm using white, is you need to go and you need to put in some highlights. So the highlights are sort of opposite to where our shadows are and where that is gonna go. So I'm gonna put some white streaks coming in between my tulip. I'm gonna have the centers of my tulips quite white. Add some more here. There we go. And you're almost just streaking on this white. So again, this is our third layer. We've got a few more layers to go. So I'm gonna add some highlights in and around here, have the centers of this flower a little more white, and this guy too. I'll put some white coming in our centers. So our flowers are starting to look layered now. Okay, so we've got those contrasts pulling up, and I'm just gonna go over a little bit with my purple because I put a bit too much white over here. There we go. So yeah, so you want those contrast colors to still show up on your tulips, but you wanna make sure that you've got some pops of that white. So these contrasts and the highlights are really what brings this painting together. So sometimes it's about playing around with it, getting that blend in. The final step, and it might not be your final step, you might want to work on it a little bit longer, but you're going to add your original color. So after we've done our highlights and our shadows on either side, what we're going to do now is blend in that original color and try to shape out the petals. So I'm going to put some of this original color to reshape some of my petals, and then you're going to start to see these tulips really, really pop. So I'm taking pink. Pink was my original color, and I'm just reshaping some of those colors. There we go. I just lost some of my purple in here, so I'm going back over it as well with the shadow just to make sure I do have some of that purple that's very, very distinct. Perfect. All right, so there we go. This is quite white, so again, you can go in. So flip-flop between your pinks and, or sorry, your base color and your highlights and your contrast until you're super happy with how your flowers are looking. The important thing with this particular painting is that it is layered. So you can always go back in and add another stripe of your darker color, or you can go back in and throw in some more highlights. Keep in mind that the sun will kiss the tips of your petals. So make sure that you do have some whites, and that's what I'm doing right now, really highlighted at the tips of your petals, because that's where the sun would shine the brightest, on tops of these petals. All right, perfect. So there, so we've got our flowers all highlighted and ready to go. The last step on the flowers is we do want to give some highlight to the stems. So with yellow, if you don't have yellow, you can absolutely use white. What we're going to do is we are going to just put one tiny little yellow highlight just along the neck of your stem and pull it through into the stem just about an inch. So it's not going to come all the way down, but just a little bit to give it that little highlight. If you also want to add a little yellow to one or two parts of your flowers, then what that does is it ties everything in together. So the yellow is meant just to look a little bit like another highlight, but it also ties everything all in together. So there we go. The final step of your flowers, and by all means feel free to ask me questions, let me know how it's going. I know everybody paints at different speeds, so by all means let me know how yours is working out. But what we want to do is we want to make some sort of effect in our background. So when you're all done with your petals and your stems, and you've really highlighted and you're happy with the way that the contrast looks, and you know mommy or even daddy or grandma, grandpa will love this painting, what I want you to do is you're going to do some sort of detail in your background. So I really like the dip dots and these little swirls, and I've done the swirls in purple and white, and I've done white dip dots. You can do both, or you can just do dip dots, or you can just do swirls, or you can leave it blank. Maybe you want to add a little cloud in the background. This is your painting. It's entirely up to you. If you are doing the swirls, what you can always do is chalk them on. Good morning, Rosie and Gracie. You can chalk them on if you want, just to make sure that you don't end up making a mistake. So I'm going to chalk on a few little swirls. And it's always good to stagger them, not have them too consistent. And I want to make sure. There, some might fall off the sides, and that's okay. Maybe we'll do another one up here and one over here. All right, so I'm going to do them in purples and in whites. So how I do that, the swirls, is you always start in the middle, and I kind of move my brush around connecting that swirl. So I don't do it in one consistent brush stroke. I find my swirls never tend to look even when I do that, but we are going to bring it around and flick off the ends like we did with our stems so that it kind of looks like it's, you know, it's fading off there. So I'm gonna do these in purple and in white. So I'll probably do those, maybe those two white, maybe I'll do this one in purple. So again, I'm just going around like this, and that'll be white. I'll do this one in purple. And remember, when you get close to the end, it's always best to just sort of flick it off to finish it up. There we go. And maybe white. And I'll do this guy in purple. Oh, no. And then there, I'll finish that one off in white. Perfect. There we go. And then now let's see what these guys look like in white. Maybe I won't end up doing that one. Okay, so for white, I'm gonna just do the same where I'll start off in the center and then you just bring that paint all the way around. There. Some people have done this with zigzags in the background too. I mean, like I said, I can't wait to see what everyone decides to add. You can make your backgrounds as personal as you'd like, as busy as you'd like, as not busy as you'd like. The important thing too is that whenever you finish your painting like this and you're giving it away to somebody, if you decide to give it away, always write on the back. So I like to make sure that my kids write their ages, their names, and the date and year when it was done. Same, maybe right now you could even write, you know, done during COVID, something that, you know, will spark some sort of memory in the future. But it's always best to write, give your painting a name, or to write your ages, your date that you completed it on, just to make sure that you do have that memory set. So I've done my swirls, and what I'm gonna do now is the dip dots. So how we're gonna do the dip dots is using the end of our paintbrush, dipping it into the white, and we can go ahead and fill in very gently the spaces around that look like they need something but won't quite fit one of the swirls. So we can go ahead and fill in some dots throughout the background like that. There we go. And we have finished our Mother's Day painting. So again, feel free to play around and touch up some areas of your painting. I'm just going in here and adding a little bit of some brighter white to my tulip. Must have gotten, there we go. So yeah, so there we go. We have finished our Mother's Day tulips.